Good day and welcome to this episode of CodeAlong with gOZie. We'll be looking at CSS. During our lessons on how the web works, I explained to you that different technologies different technologies are used to instruct the browser to do different things. Whereas HTML is used to instruct the browser to present elements on the web page, CSS is used to define how they look, where they're placed, layout, and so on and so forth. So in the next series of classes, we'll be looking at CSS in details. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It is used to define styles for web pages, including the design, layout, and how pages display across different devices and screen sizes. CSS syntax consists of a selector and a declaration block. So let's look at this. Okay, so let's pick one of our HTML pages. Let me close a good number of them. Okay, let me pick the one on paragraph. Okay, and to use one of the ways of using CSS is to use the style tag in the head section. And like I said, it consists of a selector and a declaration block. So a selector is a way of instructing the browser to find an element to style. So I want to instruct the browser to find all paragraphs. And then I said CSS syntax consists of selectors and declaration blocks. And a declaration block, so the declaration block is denoted by this. And within the declaration block, you could declare you could have one or more declarations that are separated by semicolons, and each of those declarations will consist of a property name. For instance, if a paragraph, let's say the property name is the color, that's the text color, it's called color. Each declaration consists of a property name, a semicolon, a colon, and the value. So let's say red. And if you have multiple declarations, you should separate them with semicolon. So I want to center out the text. Text align, center. Okay, so like I said, the CSS syntax consists of two sections. One is the selector, which is used to tell the browser to select a particular element or a particular group of elements. For instance, this is a way of instructing the browser to find all the paragraphs on this page, like these paragraphs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and apply the style that is the style declarations that are included in this declaration block. So the declaration block is denoted by the curly braces, and then within the curly braces you now have as many as the declaration rules you want, and each declaration rule consists of a property name, a CSS property name, and a value separated by a colon. Now, if you have multiple declarations, it will be separated by semicolons. Okay, so according to example, we are now instructing the browser to style all the P's, make the color red, and then center them. So let's look at this page. Paragraph. Okay, see? You can see that they're all red and they are centered. Just like I said a little while ago, CSS selectors are used to instruct the browser to find the HTML elements or elements you want to style. The most basic CSS selectors are the element selector, the ID selector, the class selector, the universal selector, and grouping selector. So let's start with the element selector. This is an example of an element selector. It's just used to instruct the browser to find an element that's located the tag. Let's have another example. So let's say we have a div, and the div contains paragraph. Let's say lorem 30. Okay, and we want to style the div with everything inside it. Element selector is to select the div, and declare a code block. Within that, specify the rows. So let's use the same rows. Color, let's say the color should be cherries, and that's all. Okay, so let's look at that. Okay, the paragraph rule seems to override that, so let's comment this off. Okay, so sorry, the paragraph rule supersedes because it's within the div, so it will override whatever the rule you have for the div. Okay, we have a way of dealing with that, but let's get there with simple steps. What I did here is called comments, and we'll get there too. Okay, so I just commented it off. That means I'm telling the browser not to run this code. That's what I just did here. Now you can see that this is how to use element selectors. Just tell the browser what element you want. It will locate it on the page and apply the rules. Next is the ID selector. The ID selector uses the ID attribute of an HTML element to select a specific element. Let's look at what that means. So of all the paragraphs, let's say we assign an ID here. I'll call this special para. Okay, let's uncomment this and let's change this selector to denote an ID. We use the hashtag special. Let me copy this. Okay, so this is a selector. It's now asking the browser to find the hashtags. The hashtag is used to instruct the browser to find an ID whose value is equal to whatever you have here. Okay, it's also worth noting that the ID of an element is unique within a page. That means I will not have another element on this page with an ID special para. It's one per page. I could have it on another page, but I can't have it on this page. So it's the ID is a unique value. It's a unique characteristics, unique attributes. I mean the ID name, not the ID itself. So I could have this paragraph with an ID of maybe para. Okay, is allowed, but I cannot have two elements like this bearing para, no, on the same page, or two elements bearing this one. No, that's wrong syntax. Okay, so that's what an ID is. Like I said earlier, an ID is used to identify an element as being unique on a page. So what if you want to apply a particular set of rules to multiple elements, but not all? So let's say I have these paragraphs. Let's remove this. Okay, or let's leave it. I have these paragraphs, and there are these two. Let's say this and this. I want to give them a special kind of design. And remember, I said that you can have two elements bearing the same ID name on the same page. Now you want to assign them the same role. How do you do that? We use what we call a class. The class attributes. I could just call this para1. Okay, and I could copy the class because you can have multiple elements using the same class name. So I'll use .para1. The dot is used to denote classes, used to instruct the browser to locate classes. And let's say same thing here. Let's use this. Let's say use the color attributes, but this time we're asking to to assign the value of crimson, the color crimson, to the paragraph. So let's look at what we have. Okay, so this is crimson for the class. Okay, let's change it from red to something bluish, so it's different. So this is special power, the first one for ID, and para1, that's the next. Okay, skipped one, the next two for the classes. Okay, the next kind of selector we're looking at is called the universal selector. It is used to select all the elements on the page, every single one of them. So let me apply that. I will always want to have my universal selectors at the top. So to denote a universal selector, you use the asterisk. And let's say I want to change the font family. That's kind of like the handwriting. Okay, let's put this just for practice purposes. I just change the font size of every single thing on this page. Okay, so see, it changed the font to look as a font family. That's kind of like the handwriting. Just change everything by using this universal selector. Okay, now the next one is the grouping selector. The grouping selector selects all the HTML elements within the same style definition. Let's look at what that means. Let's say I have h1 here, and the h1 is hello world, and I have h2. Oh, sorry, h2, and it says hi, and okay, just that. Now I want my h1 to have a color of gray, and I want my h2 to have the color gray, and I also want my paragraph, okay, let's say a paragraph, to have the color gray. Now this is not the best way to apply this. It will work, that's the truth, it will work. Okay, so that's my heading 1, that's my heading 2, that's the paragraph remaining after we must have applied IDs and classes. Okay, those ones are great. The challenge is it will work. The challenge is this is not the best way to do it. Now we are going to use what we call the grouping selector. How does it work? Just instead of having all this like this, we have h1, h2, p. Now I'll now have to delete these. So I just grouped selectors that have the same style attributes, the same styling applied to them. So that's what we call, we just grouped them together and apply the same style where they have the same styling within them. Okay, so if I refresh this, basically the same. Okay, so let's look at how to insert CSS to a page. There are 3 ways of inserting a style sheet. We have external, internal, and inline. Okay, so let's start with external. External CSS is an external with an external style sheet. You could change the look of an entire website, not just a web page. An entire website by changing just one file. So think of an external style sheet as your perfect situation where you have just one style rule and have multiple pages connected to it. So all you need to apply any change is to make that change on that file. Every single page on the site format to that style. It's a perfect situation. Each HTML page must include a reference to the external style sheet for it to work. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So for us to create the external style sheet, we'll go to our CSS folder and we create the file. Let me name it gOZie, whatever I want to name it. Okay, no, sorry, this is a project CodeAlong.css. Okay, now I want to take these off. I like to comment this off and apply the, okay, let's really comment them off. I would like to cut them, okay, remove them from this page and apply them here in our external style sheet. Remember that previously these styles were applied to only the paragraph.html. Now how do I add it to this page? Okay, let's look at what's happening right now. Nothing special, just our blank page, because we've moved the styles from here. Now how do I apply this style sheet to this page? We use the link element on the header, in the header. Now it has 2 mandatory attributes: the rel attribute, which you should always set to style sheets. Now the href points to the file, the CSS file you want to link to this page. So right now we are here, paragraph.html, and like I told you when we're dealing with images and every and the anchor tag, you will have to locate the file from where you have to locate the resource from where the file is. So right now we are in paragraph.html. We want to locate a file that's within the CSS folder. So the first we're supposed to tell the browser is to find it within the CSS folder. CSS slash, of course, VS Code will read the content on that folder and list out every file there. So we have this. Now if I refresh this page, those rules will be applied. Okay, now I could do the same for all the other pages. Okay, let's just pop up just the basic first 2 or 3. Okay, so block inline, block practice, and div. Okay, so let's open them. Block inline, the rules are applied. Our H1 and H2, the paragraphs are gray. Okay, so our rules apply here. Block practice, gray text for all the paragraphs. H1 is gray. Okay, div, same thing, gray text. Okay, so if you want to apply any change, let's say we no longer want our paragraphs to be gray, we want them to be blue. All we need to do is just make change here. Nothing too special, just make the change here to something greenish blue, and it applies to all the pages. If you refresh, just one change and it applies to all the pages. Right now let's look at the internal CSS. An internal style sheet may be used if one single HTML page has a unique style. The internal style is defined inside the style element that's inside the head section. Okay, we've done this before, but let's look at how the internal style sheet relates with the external. So let's say this is our paragraph. Okay, and despite our, of course, like according to my definition, you have to make your style element here, and for every single page on this website, the paragraph tag will be gray, but for this page we want the paragraph tag to be some other color. So we have color red. Paragraph. Okay, so you can see it's red. Okay, not just paragraph. Let's make just like the other one, H1, H2, paragraph. Okay, let's make it a compound selection. Okay, you can now say it. Why did it select this one as against this one? Okay, there's something called something like a hierarchy, a high authority. Okay, the internal style sheet has a higher authority. I don't think it's authority that's called. I think it's called okay, just see it as authority. Okay, just like authority. The internal style sheet has a higher authority than the external style sheet. So if I want to override something as an external style sheet on a particular page, I use external style sheets. This brings us to the inline style sheet, which is the last way of inserting style sheets. An inline style may be used to apply a unique style to a single element. We did this before, and I told you it's not really the proper way, but let's look at it again. It's applied to the opening tag of an element. So let's say we want to style this here, that this is inline, it's within the element itself, and we'll change the color to black. Okay, so this, okay, what I was looking for is priority. The inline has a higher priority than the internal, and the internal has a higher priority than the external. Okay, so let's look at, we're still in paragraph page, so you can see this is black despite all the rules from both the external and the internal.